All right. So our next speaker is Heikki Hirvonen, and he's going to talk about the key factor to manage success, retain success, something. Give us applause.
Well, close enough. I'm talking about organizational philosophy. But anyway, first point I want to point out here is this is not my field of study. So I'm gathered kind of the whole presentation on the point on following articles, following opinions, following discussions, and adding up what I've myself seen in the 10 years I've been working, and in different scenes and in different areas of work life. Please. So there's a couple of articles I'm going to approach this whole measure, this whole thing. The first one is from Will Hutton, from the Observer, and the name of the article is, well, modern capitalism is at moral dead end and bosses are to blame. He argues that the chief executives makes too much money, and the first point is that in 2000 it was 47 times the average worker, and in 2010 it's already 81 times. And because of this, the chief executives have lost the sight of what's important in the business, in the whole cluster, and in society. And he brings up a couple guys from the 50s, Uwe Arup, who said that excessive personal pay divide companies, and these divided companies will collapse. They will not stand. Then there was John Lewis from the same era, and he said the differences of reward must be large enough to encourage to perform, but present differences are too great. And this was in 1957. He thought that the top executive reward were too great in 57. And both of them, the main point of them is that the firms are moral enterprises. The point of profit serves the business's purpose of the firm. So the big point is that the firm, the entity, is only a part of it is business. It's supposed to be something bigger. There's supposed to be some bigger meaning than just making profit. Then there is Professor Jeffrey Preffer from Stanford, who wrote Newsweek about the American method of doing business. His point is that the practices are going to the wrong direction of being flexible. And by meaning being flexible means that they fire people when there's trouble. And according to Pfeffer, these companies weaken themselves by firing people when problems arrive. So they basically use firing people as problem-solving method, and this causes several indirect costs. It levies indirect costs, like going low on moral. The work moral goes low. It's harder to find new competent people and keep it up. And his example was after 9/11, most of the airlines were firing people very aggressively because they knew it's going to be downturn from there. Now, there was an exception, Southwest, who hasn't fired people in 40 years due to productivity or efficiency reasons. Now it's the biggest airline in US, and it actually it does well. And the other companies in the area are struggling to actually make any profit at all. And the reason for this, according to Pfeffer, is that the employees are very well motivated, and there is a good spirit in the whole company, and therefore it works. The third approach is from John Hagel, John Brown, Lang Davidson. They argue about the question of knowledge workers. Are all employees knowledge workers? So in most companies, when top management, the executives talk about talent in their company, they talk about the top hires of management in the company, and then something called knowledge workers. By knowledge workers, there's basically any kind of creative personnel anything that creates new ideas, all that knowledge workers. And then they basically say, not directly, but indirectly, they say that the rest of them are regular workers. They do routinized tasks. Now, when they focus, when the executives focus on the knowledge workers, they lose sight of the routinized jobs and the fact that you have to improvise in them as well. And in this article, they argue that, as you can see in China and India, to where all of these companies have been outsourcing their work. They've outsourced there, and in India and China, when this routinized work becomes the core of the work they're doing, the core of the company, the main tasks, they've seen very, very fast improvements, both in talent and performance. So the whole idea they're proposing is that if you actually think of these routinized tasks to be the main tasks, you actually see when you put these workers in the very core, in the basic of the company, they become creative, they create value, and they get better results. Now, that's what the Japanese automakers have been doing from the beginning. If you heard something like Six Sigma or lean manufacturing, it's all coming from there. And in these companies, in this philosophy, the whole company works together. So the main workers, the factory floor workers, are in the core. They're always in the process. And thus they argue that basically you could see all employees to be knowledge workers. And then finally, the fourth approach I've used was from Jim Collins, How the Mighty Fall and Why Some Companies Never Give In. Now, he has this five-step program of how the very good companies eventually fall. And he argues that it starts from the success. First, you have a company that succeeds really, really well. And then happens step one, if it's going to fall. The very top management gets arrogant. They think that they got where they got because of they're very talented, and there's nothing to do with environment or nothing else except their own talent. Now this leads to step two. They're trying to grow, and they usually grow to areas where they don't have any competence. Now this will lead in a worse performance, but at that point they still do okay. So top management start to blame the environment. No, we're not doing good anymore because of the environment, because of China, because of internet. And in step four, when the problems really arise, you cannot avoid them anymore. Everybody's noticing that the company is not doing it so good anymore. Then the change management, the change managers, the charismatic leaders come up and try to change the company. Now, they tried to find silver bullets, and there's nothing wrong with it, but basically it's really hard to, at that point, if you do really drastic measures, you lose the original sight. And that often leads to step five, in which case both managers and employees, they lose the faith to the company, and then it's done. And Collins actually claimed that this is what happened to General Motors. This was happened to GM. It used to be a really good company, great company, but it fell down because of arrogance of top executives. Now, then what I'm basically trying to approach here in all these different measures is resilient philosophy. I took my exchange in Japan, and there was this guy Naoshi Takatsu, who was basically he wasn't a normal lecturer. He came from the business world, but he lectured us in this course called Creating Value in Business. And he argued that if you want a company that will succeed in longer term, you need to have some big points or as he put it, the resilient philosophy in the company. And if you have that, you can in longer term still succeed. If you don't have that, you will not prevail. Now, it wasn't actually his slides, but we had discussion of what's happened, and there was some guy who pointed out from the Fortune 500 in the 70s that most of the companies that were the big ones then are not even exist anymore. They do fusion or something, but they disappear. And basically, the idea is that if you only drive for profits, you will not have very good philosophy. So the company of how it makes something needs to be higher than profits. And that is, the philosophy is, that gives purpose to the company and drives it forward. So it unites the company from the worker to top management. And, well, it just gives the higher purpose of pulling the whole organization towards a goal. And then that is how it keeps profitable. Of course, it doesn't happen automatically. The philosophy has to be actively strengthened and communicated to the company, so it's kept alive and it strengthens itself. So, in conclusion, I tried to approach all the problems in different ways from different writers of how they see with problems with companies. Now, I don't know what's the right level of compensation for top executives, or when it's the right decision to fire people, or if classification of employees is beneficial or harmful, or how to recognize a downfall for a company. But these all happen largely because of the companies are divided. They don't have a common goal. They're separated. They're not one unity. They're not one entity. And thus, I believe that if you have this resilient philosophy or something like that, you can build up the organization trying to do the same thing. And then you achieve something stronger. Then you can build your company forward, and you can make something great of the company through the philosophy. And the final point I'm trying to make here is that it's not only a company, it's any organization. So this applies to universities. If every member of a university, from students, the head principal, are driving the same thing, you're going to have very drastic results. If the other end is a company where you just have the executives and the workers and they do whatever they'll tell them to do, and they're just resources, it's not going to yield a lot of anything. So if a company like this rises fast, it will also crush very fast if it's only profit you drive. So you have to have some idea for the whole organization to go forward. Otherwise, it will not prevail. And that's pretty much what I'm trying to say. It's not about the what, it's about the why and how. Thank you.